Hello, what's up? My name is Alexander Speaks, and this is Tarot to the Extreme. Don't mind me, I'm just setting the stage for a very aesthetic video, because why not? Slay. Okay, so I saw this video concept done before. This is my brainstorming journal. I have multiple journals that are just like one thing and one thing only, because it helps me keep my thoughts organized. But it was Tarot to the Extreme VR that I wanted to do. And I'm going to put the creator on the screen right now because who can never remember these? Me. So it's minimalist versus maximalist, daytime versus nighttime, best shuffle versus worst shuffle, confronting versus conforming, everyday versus every so often, overrated versus underrated, light work versus shadow work, and conscious versus unconscious. And I do want to mention that for the overrated one, I'm going to be as polite as I can. I don't mean to be, disrespectful from one artist to another. Um, you know, I think that you can critique works of art and it's not a critique of the artists themselves if you know how to do it. So that's going to be the approach that we're going to go for. And also, the final note before I begin is that I have already filmed this and the audio is lost. So we are going to just have fun with it. I have a iced coffee that was a reusable cup that was given to me, but I have a pumpkin iced coffee with a homemade pumpkin syrup that I made. Ooh, can't speak today. And we are going to mention that the confronting versus conforming, light work versus shadow working, conscious versus unconscious. I'm treating those as three separate things. Things can be light work and also confronting. Things can be conscious and also confronting. So let's get into this. Let's have some fun. Honestly, when was the last time you had fun? So let's see. Minimalist versus maximalist. For the minimalist, I probably have already talked about this deck before, but I'm going to do it again. So this is the OK Tarot, the simple deck for everyone by Adam J. Kurtz. And I think when people say minimalist, they think boring. Now, I don't know what that crud is. This is the only deck with that in it. So I'm tempted to think it's not from me, but when people think minimalistic, they often think simple and boring. And that's not personally, if we're talking about the aesthetic of minimalism and the intention and the purpose of it, I do not think minimalism is about being boring. I'm a maximalist and I'm appreciating minimalism. So I think this is a very simplified, beautiful deck. I think that this is a great deck that would be good for you if you're looking to recreate its illustrations, whether it's in a journal or if you're practicing like an illustrative grimoire. I also love this shade of pink. I will say it would be great if I know they don't typically do it if the book was gilded in this pink, or even if it was just the same pink as the page color, and if this was gilded in the same pink. Because I love pink, okay, love pink. I feel like you should just go all out at that point. Um, I also feel like this stack as a minimalist product is a really great example of I don't care. There's no good reason for you not to make your own deck. I don't care. Um, Everyone has their own specific point of view, their own perspective, their own lived experiences that you can pull from. And even if you feel like it's something as simple as this, it's still going to convey something to a viewer. It's still going to have some experience with the reader. And I think that maybe, you know, we've talked about you being entitled to suffering in my last grimoire ramble. You're entitled to suffering when it comes to like you have a right to suffer and not be a good artist for a point in time. Not that this is bad art, but you're also entitled to have your own um, growing pains and stretch marks as an artist. And I feel like this as an example of the world. This is such a succinct condensation. That's not the right word But you know what I mean, like simplification, or I guess like the heart of the traditional Rider Waite Smith card. If I can find it. Don't ask why. So the portal itself recreated, right? So simplified and still within the same universe of the artwork. I wish more people took decks like this, minimalist, and not only like appreciated the purpose and form of it, but also took it, if you really have a critique against it, as inspiration to make your own deck, you know? That isn't me saying like get over it, make your own. It's me saying I want to see your deck, please. If you need help making a deck, please talk to me. If you want to know where to print it, how to format it, please let me know, you know? I want to see other people tell their stories. But that's the minimalist deck. And I think the most minimalist part about this is the guidebook. So each card gets the name, and then not even a sentence, just like 3 options, and like that's it. So that's the minimalist tarot deck. It's the okay tarot. It's not perfect, but it's okay. So on for the next one, which is the maximalist. You will be surprised to know that even though I am a maximalist, I do not use this deck this very often, and there's a reason why. So I've chosen the Nameless One Tarot and Oracle deck. I'm going to mention now that I'm going to be... What is that? I don't know what that is. I'm going to be going over tarot decks, oracle decks, runes, Lenormand, playing cards. I'm going to go over all of them in any of these tags because I feel like it. But as a maximalist point of view, so people think that the tarot deck is supposed to represent all of the possibilities of humanity. Imagine getting to the end of that and going, we need more. So first off, it's upside down. It's maximalist in the way that it has a ribbon tie closure and a certificate of authenticity, because I'm not a thief, you know? This is a side note, I'm pulling this out. I had the displeasure of meeting someone who was insistent on how punk and alternative they were. And they're like, yeah, I have a pretty big deck collection. Like, I don't even know if you know what to do with it. And he sent a video, and like all of it was counterfeit decks. And I was like, so you're okay with stealing artwork and like not financially supporting the artist? And he's like, is it that big of a deal? And I was like, well, you know, some people mean their words. So this is the deck. It is big boy, big girl, chunky, right? And the maximalist aspect of it is kind of subservient in its nature. There's no titles on the front or back. And the way that you tell what card it is the sigils. So the sigils on the back are gilded. The sigils on the back are gilded, and then on the sides as well. And the sigils on the front, if it's an elemental symbol like this, or like this, right? It is simply the suit of that element, and then how many dots is how many of the element it is. So this is the sign of Earth, and there's 2 dots, so it's the 2 of Pentacles, just in case you didn't know how to count the 2. Or maybe, let's go find a different one. This is Earth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the 7 of Pentacles. And if it is a mask like this, it is 100% going to be one of the royal court cards. And then if it's one of these cards, then it's actually like a major arcana, if you can obviously tell it, or it's an oracle card. Let me get your opinion on this. This is a long-standing argument I've had for a while. So this is metallic, right? And I've asked people if metallic blue is metallic blue, it's just blue that's metallic. Um, is silver metallic white? And people are like, no, silver and white are two separate colors. So then I ask, what is metallic white then? Um, and there's no word. People get stuck at this and they're like, what? But silver's not white, but if white's metallic and it's not, what is that then? So, in my own personal opinion, I think that silver is not metallic white. But if you think it is, let me know. And if you know what the name is for a metallic white, if there's like a term for it, let me know. But the maximalist part of this deck isn't only the massive form of the deck, it's not even the miniature guidebook, right? Let me go set this aside. It's actually ooh, the big guidebook. And put these art supplies back. So this is the Nameless One Tarot and Oracle Deck Companion Grimoire. And let's just flip to a random card. So I personally believe that maximalism is not just about filling a page with as much as possible. It's also just an exercise of more is more, right? It's about a substance and adding the most of substance within the space. So this is the Five of Wands. You get a full page illustration. And then on top of that, you get the tarot title, you get the alternative oracle titles, an affirmation, the numerology, an element, astrology, animals, plants, crystals, colors, candles, and then a little repeating poem. You then get an overview meaning of the card itself, and upright and reverse meaning. And by this, I mean like more like the artwork itself. You get the sigil with 3 suggestive uses for the sigil. And then it goes over everything in the deck and in the artwork from the trees. So the tree, this is an entire paragraph section just for the symbology of the tree in that one card. This section all here is all about wolves. This is about the dire wolf skeleton. This is the snow. These are the specific colors. And then a little last note. So for an element of more equals more equals more, this guidebook it's pretty hefty on its own. And then only to get to the back. Okay. So when we get to the back, we have tarot and we have oracle spreads. That's the last of the oracle cards. And then let's see. Sigil magic. So they talk about sigil magic. The list of all the affirmations and all the sigils. These are the extra sigils that were funded and made by people within the community. The astrological correspondences according to the artists, the zodiac constellations, the associations for the zodiac signs per card, the daily magic section of like what to do on Sunday, what to do on Monday, what to do if you follow that. I do not. The numerology of the tarot and the paired tarot cards, the animal correspondences for every animal in it, as well as the plant correspondences. We still have some sections left. Let's see, the crystal correspondences. Looks like the book is ripping this from here from how big and heavy it is. The symbolism and psychology of color. Again, if you believe in this, if you follow this with the candle and their candle magic uses, I do not. It even has examples of spells. Okay. And then this is the acknowledgments for everyone who brought this deck into existence, and then right here. So we want to talk about maximalism. That's this deck. That was a whole little rant, wasn't it? The next one is daytime versus nighttime. So let's see. Also, this little ribbon closure, when you just want to feel witchy and you're like, oh, it is done. Not even Simo to be. It's because I said so. This sort of small stuff. Okay, let's see. Nighttime versus daytime. This is the daytime and the nighttime. So this is the Fountain Tarot, first edition. And people talk about this deck all the time about the gilding and how the gilding never chips. And for a deck to have gone through multiple owners and then end to me and still have most of the gilding, I would have to say that the gilding stays. This artwork is so abundantly bright as an example of daytime and daylight. It's also fairly corporate looking, right? In my personal opinion, a lot of these are like corporate esque artworks. I could see them like this, for example. I could see this one, or even I could see this in a bank. Maybe not like a Bank of America bank, but a lot of these are like very, in my personal opinion, like corporate esque artwork. And I enjoy it. It also reminds me of this YouTuber. If I remember, I'm going to tag them down below and post a photo. But they post very beautiful, beautiful videos. And some of them are like cooking videos. And I want to mention about that card. And in the description of the title of like the channel itself, it says that their favorite color is transparent. And that's something that really breathes about this to me. Like, this isn't just light, it's light through transparent surfaces. And there's like multiple layers of transparency, like that right there, where you can definitely tell. Like when you're looking through like glass, you know that you're looking through glass because the shades of light that is going through is slightly altered, right? Um, or at least if you're perceptive and you pay attention to it, you notice that there is a difference. And that's something that I think daytime wise, this deck captures very well. I want to mention, every time I see this card, it reminds me of the song Cake by the Ocean. And then this song, you cannot tell me that that is not Lady Gaga. Like, it's giving art pop. But that is the daytime deck. I think that I like how the back of the cards are symmetrical because I notice not everyone does that. And I don't really do reversals, but I still appreciate and value a reversible back. But I don't really like the back. Not that you have to. So for nighttime, I have the Hyde Tarot. So I love this deck for so many different reasons. One, the back is very Twilight Zone-esque. Like, you are entering into a world beyond your comprehension. I also love the artwork of it. I like how you have the title separate from the artwork. It almost makes this function as both a tarot deck and a fortune telling style oracle deck in the way of like when you're reading fortune telling styles decks, right? It's very much this is the wolf, and what does the wolf do, and what does the wolf represents, and how does the wolf act in a story, and then you take the symbology of that card and then you apply it to the position in which it is used in the reading. And I really enjoy that. So you're almost getting two decks for one. And little known fact about, I think it's mentioned in the guidebook, which, as you can tell, you know, I do have a lot of guidebooks and also just a lot of books in general. They talk about what a hide is. As a hide is, that's so beautiful. A hide is the space that you would reside in, like think like a man-made pillow fort, but out of trees that you use while you're hunting. I like how impressionistic a lot of the artwork is. So the idea is that you're hiding in the middle of the woods at night, and the light is hitting all these things in the world around you, and you're actively seeing like life and nature itself peer through and tell you the story of the tarot, which I really appreciate. Um, I love the shading of this. I like how even though every card's black and white, it's almost a different style of black and white. I love so many different aspects of this. I think my favorite card is, let's see if I can find it real quick. Yeah. So my favorite card is the Siren as the devil. I think that there is something, hopefully this does not come off as insulting, almost mediocre about this man, right? And yet I think there's something about mediocrity and wishing to fit in and not wanting to be different that is so inherently like devil card esque. Like, it wasn't my fault. I was just trying to fit in. I was just trying to XYZ. Um, Side note, the creator, Dan Francis, right? He was working at one point on a collage style tarot deck, and I have some of the artwork from it. And then he just stopped posting online. And I don't know what happened because I generally love this idea as a deck. I love the back. Um, it's not really reversible, but I love it still. I love the titles. I think it's clear that Dan Francis has a talent in storytelling, and I wish to hear more from him, wherever he is. The next one is, let's see, the best shuffle versus the worst shuffle. So the best shuffle is the Moonlit Hermit Tarot. It is an 82 card tarot deck of paper cut collage images modeled after the Tarot de Marseille. And I think, argument based, this is such a wonderful deck. I have been talking a while, at least personally, to people within my life about how it's not fair, it's not fun that the Rider-Waite-Smith deck gets reinvented again and again and again and again, and Thoth gets reinvented again and again. And almost to some extent, Marseille is expected to say the same, right? And I think this is such a fun, excellent, look at that, that's so beautiful. Well thought out reinvention and interpretation of the Tarot de Marseille, right? I know they're modeled after the Tarot de Marseille, and that's what they say. The guidebook isn't also something that I personally feel is going to let you down, right? It has very specific imagery within the deck that was very intentionally made. And I feel like even if you don't read the Marseille and you treat this like an Oracle deck, it is it's very beautiful, right? It shows thought and attention, and it was purposeful, and I appreciate that. There's also something about the way that he draws like fire and then the overlaying of these textures that are so beautiful. And then for the shuffle, this deck has a linen finish, also gilded in black because we are committed. But there's something about the linen of this that doesn't detract from the artwork. So I don't like linen most of the time because so you can get it. That texture that you're seeing sometimes is so strong and so apparent that for me it actively disrupts the approach of looking at the artwork and understanding the visual cues and everything that the artist intended. But something about this deck, it makes it so easy to not only shuffle, I mean look at that, but it's not overwhelmingly noticeable. It's not something that is going to detract from the reading, you know? And I don't know where this person got their deck printed from because I've used multiple print on demand websites and I haven't found anything like it yet. At least, definitely not one that offers black gilding. As a side note, I feel like that's the thing with like print on demand websites is you have like Game Crafter, which really just allows you to print whatever you want, right? So if you have artistic nudity, if you have sexual content, if you have like dark graphic content, um, basically aspects of human experience, right? They will print it for you. But with Make Playing cards, they won't print it for you, but they have more customizable options. And it's so frustrating because I wish I could just give Game Crafter all my money for a gilded deck or Make Playing cards because they let you print stuff. Also, they comes with these 4 extra cards and love it. Yeah. This next deck for the worst shuffler, I was at one point, I was like, I need to drown my entire collection in diversity. I want more. I want it, you know? You definitely have some, I'm gonna be honest, weirdos and freaks online who are like, diversity is being shoved down our throats. I disagree. You know, sometimes we actually want to take our head out of our own and look at the world around us. And this deck, this is the Oculi Oculati Tarot, was on a list for gay decks. And what's interesting is this is actually not only the box, this is the deck. Like the deck is this big. And this is the back artwork for the deck. Um, Nudity warning going forward. When I first got this deck, I was initially displeased. So I have 564 out of 900. I was naturally displeased because even though it says it is a gay deck, I was looking for more um, unreasonably loud and bold gay, right? Actually, I think it might be easier just to do this. And something you'll notice within the subtleties is that A, everyone has their eyes closed. Um, like this is gay, right? But the lover's card and the interactions with the rest of the cards, I expected there to be more of like a gay romance, and there wasn't really one. This is gay. This is just some some like art student in college. He currently has a major in English, but he hasn't discovered yet that he actually really likes metalworking. And all the characters, all of them have their eyes closed except for the devil. I think this definitely, like that card, for example, it definitely plays to the male gay gaze. This is gay, but it's not like the queer tarot or something made by Saint Jinx. I think this is definitely its own. Like, if this was a gay person, this would probably be like it's the well financed gay couple who surround their art on the walls or covered in art of like gay art of different gay artists that they personally have paid for. And it's almost like an artistic exercise and how fine art this could be. I don't know if that made sense, but if not, oh well. Look at that pink prince. Even the black and white cards, which are the majors, even when they're not, I don't want to say sexualized, but like when they're not, um, there's something so expertly beautiful about the approach of the artwork. And also, all the people, sometimes they look similar, like samey. And then sometimes I'm like, oh no, these are very real, distinct, separate people. I laugh at this card because, like, this is one of the cards where I was like, is this gay enough? I was like, it looks like two bros chilling 1 feet apart because they're not gay. Let's get into the shuffle. This, oh my god, you would think I've never shuffled before. For shame. Just start throwing tomatoes at me. It's so bulky in both length and width that it's hard to, like, if a deck is like longer than it is wider, you can just shuffle the ends. Um, but you can almost not even do that. Yeah, for shame. I should quit tarot. Not really. But that's my worst shuffling deck. I still love it. I just probably don't pull it out as much because it's like I need to shuffle it. Also, just so you can get a full look at it. Ooh. I think I've only ever seen this once for sale. So people who bought it typically kept it. Let's see. The next one is confronting versus conforming. This is my comforting deck. The Sasabrito Tarot. I just think that sometimes you're having a bad day and you kind of just want someone to tell you that you're funny and you're attractive and you're smart and you're talented. And this deck is good for that. Even as I just immediately go to the sad, sad card. But everything is so delicate and sensible. There's something that even in the more painful cards, um, it's still respectful, right? It's not gratuitous. See, I gave the nudity warning before, so that's why I could just get away with that. I think, yeah, I guess I could label this as like semi impressionistic as well. But I think what this deck really does work well with is like handling particularly difficult subject matter, is in my experience with my own personal point of view. I also think this is like a really great example of like a modern tarot deck because a lot of people, I think some people have wish lists for decks that will just never exist because they're not clear in what specifically they're looking for. And I feel like this is such a great example of like a contemporary modern tarot deck that still has like the magic and the beauty um, of telling a coherent and consistent story. Like, look at that. She just got stabbed, and she goes, oh well, I cannot, I just can't believe that happened to me." I also think that, like, in order for me to find a deck and say it's confronting or conforming, sorry, I want to see how it handles the Emperor. So the Emperor for me is very important. I think that the Emperor and the High Priestess and the Hierophant, right? Those three cards to me show me at least how much work has the creator and the artist done to fully integrate the lessons of the tarot and then uh, take apart their own biases, right? Because the Emperor in like the Rider Waite Smith energy is needed, right? It's the idea of someone who sets and follows and enforces rules. If we didn't have rules, if we didn't have someone who were like, no, this is my boundary, we would all be crossing each other's boundaries, making everyone uncomfortable. I think it's very important of everyone, especially women, though, to be able to pull a card that says, at least in this world, these are your boundaries. You need to tell people to respect your boundaries or they can leave, especially with the way that the world inherently mistreats women. So, for a card that, in my own personal opinion, right, shows a relaxed, not stressed format of boundary setting, I appreciate that. I appreciate that just as much as I appreciate an Empress card that isn't saying the ideal womaness is to be pregnant. You know, we like diverse 3D images of people. And also the devil, right? I think the devil and this deck and then the Delta Enduring Tarot, people had a lot of strong opinions about. And I know that this person made an Oracle deck and I really need to get it. But B, this deck, for me at least, expert handling of the devil card, right? It's modern, right? It's not just a white man. It's also a representation of the systems of the world and how they were created and who enforces it within theory, right? So, of all the violence of the world that could be portrayed in the devil card, to say this world was set up and is being controlled by rich white straight men to some degree. Um, and here's an example of it looking straight at you, telling you you are going to listen and you are going to behave to it. I think this is uncomfy, but it's still not as uncomfy and confronting as it could be. It's still comforting in some way of all these issues. At the end of the day, they're human made. Okay. If it's created by man, it can be destroyed by man. So for the next one, which is my confronting deck, I have the Queer Revolution Tarot. I promise I have decks that I haven't shown you guys. I don't know why I'm. A lot of these prompts seem to pull on like the same themes. Confronting. I think this deck is beautiful. I think this shows queerness and queer lives as they are. I think it almost has a highly detailed maximalist approach with the artwork. And I think this deck sometimes makes me uncomfy. And I love that. I love that I am uncomfortable by this deck. Um, this deck provides questions for me that are like, is it that you crave community, or is it that you crave socialization of high quality, right? I think that what's confronting about this is that it shows queer lives as they are and not as a mythology created and perpetuated um, from like corporate media or social media of, well, these people are trying to do this thing and these people are trying to do this. It's like, no, these are just people living out their lives. I have a person who cuts my hair who looks like that. I think that what's confronting is the reality of it. And I find that my hesitation to pull from this deck, I love that face so much. My hesitation to pull from this deck is even more reason why I should be pulling from this deck. Also, another great example of someone who puts themselves into the deck and isn't self aggrandizing within it. They are within the deck and they understand that they are within part of their experience of life. They are not at the end of being an expert at life simply because they made an art project. So that's my confronting deck, my Queer Revolution Tarot, which I know, like, I said it's confronting, but I genuinely think this is beautiful and I genuinely think people should support it. So for the next one, every day and every so often, I'm going to pull for my everyday this. This is the Pride Knights playing cards. Do I pull this deck? No. But for an everyday deck, I do pull from tarot and playing cards all the time. And I think this deck was not made for divination. But sometimes it helps just to have alternative tools that you can pull from. Your mind's a toolbox, but it's many tools in. And if first tarot doesn't answer the question, you have something else. So every major royal card is a identity with the pride flag for it. And then the suit, actually, when you combine it together, makes a giant castle. And these are the jokers. I love playing card divination. I want to make my own playing card deck, um, but still have like my own readings and my own mythology behind the playing card deck, but not have it be you have to follow me. Because I know playing card decks is one of those things where everyone has their own mythology and their own reading beliefs. I love these castles, these little squirrels. I'm trying to get through the cards as fast as possible because I want to read you what it says on the back. So on the back, it says, "We are the Pride Knights, this is our battle cry. No enemy can shake us as hard as they try. There is a fire in our eyes that no hatred can kill, a passion in our hearts that is as strong as our will. To our fellow queers who fight their battles on their own, we promise to fight with you. You are never alone. To our fellow queers who have fallen with the pain, we thank you for your courage. Your fight is not in vain. We are defenders of the right to be proud of who you are, to love who you love and accept every scar. We are the knights, protectors of our pride. Together we stand, together we ride." And then for every so often, we have this. So this is the original bag that it came with. Um, I use this deck when I'm very, very, very drained and I just need to have some fun. This deck is unfortunately out of print. Um, the creator, as far as I'm aware, has always had trouble printing this deck every single time. This is the Crybaby Tarot, inspired by Melanie Martinez. It had sharp corners at first. Every shade of back is a different color. Um, I don't think that this person in particular at any point had a really good experience making this deck. And this is inspired by the first album, Crybaby, within the Crybaby trilogy from Melanie Martinez. They had attempted to make a second deck for the second album, and they received a cease and desist. So there's no more of this will be being made. Which is like my one pet peeve from that, because I understand respect artist copyright and their IP rights, but Melanie Martinez has openly talked about their use of tarot and has openly been like, at one point, marketing things that could be perceived as a tarot deck, only for it to not be tarot, but to be a perfume. I love that. I don't use this deck that often because I think, well, A, the images are also not centered. I feel like this deck is so beautiful and could just use a little bit more love. Hmm. Also, the Lovers card is one of the very few straight Lovers cards that I love. So, there is something about Lovers cards, Wheels of Fortunes, and sometimes entire suits where some creators, in my own personal opinion, they just get lazy, right? Um, that's not to say that, like, I'm expecting masterpieces of artwork, but more of, if you're telling me that every card in your tarot deck is a cosmological retelling of your life, right? Um, and it has all these intricacies and details and specifics, and then you get to the Lovers card, and it's just two people who are in love, and then the Wheel of Fortune is just like a wheel. What to me that is showing is that you are willing to engage with intellectual discussion with every other card except for these, right? But something about this, if you read primarily Rider Waite Smith, you definitely get that choice. If you read visually it tells a story. Um, Even if you read like an alternative format, there's still something beautiful about this, and I appreciate it. The next deck is overrated versus underrated. Let me get some of my coffee. This is my overrated deck. Now, hear me out. Massive trigger warning for this deck. At one point, this was the deck to get. You had to get it. You had to get it. It is mass market. Most of my decks are indie, and I had gotten this deck after it was explained how much this was a deck you have to have. I have many issues with this deck. So, for one, respectfully, this is the artist of the deck, and I think bold choice to put yourself into a tarot deck in a position that is self-aggrandizing. I'm not here to attack the creator or to devalue the artwork. I'm just saying this is a very bold choice, and I do not think that that is a choice that you can put yourself in a self-aggrandizing position, and you can do that, and it can work out well. This is not a case of it working out well. This deck is photographic, and by that I mean it's illustrations that are drawn by pencil, but they're almost like photographs. They are pencil drawings, and I think that realism can be very fun, and you can enjoy it. I edged this deck myself as well as the guidebook. And I think realism can be fun, but there's a certain violence in. Let's see if I can find it. In one of these in a couple of these cards actually, that just show, I guess, gratuitous pain. That makes me wonder if the application was unnecessary, right? Or even like some. That's the card I was looking for. So, trigger warning for dead bodies, massive acts of violence, animal cruelty, war, and drugs and drug use. Okay, so this card is the Three of Swords, and I feel like you can tell the story of Three of Swords, and not. I don't know. I feel like you can tell the story of Three of Swords with drug use, but I think the application of this and the way that it's used almost feels disrespectful. I think that this is very interesting. Using the Nazi flag, the sickle and hammer, the dollar sign, the Chinese flag over a sign of dead bodies. Very interesting, especially when historically one of the greatest forms of killers and genocides was actually led from the U.S. government. So all the genocides from the U.S. government, I guess, are not important, but this one is. Um, I think that using the Twin Towers and the Berlin Wall as the tower card, I could see that particularly being offensive to some. Sometimes you do need offensive nature in artwork, and I understand that. Um, that being said, I do believe that I wouldn't mind having either of these structures within the tower card or within a tarot deck. I don't mind having great suffering in tarot decks. I think just the way that is executed in the image and in the guidebook is subpar. I think that the cruelty of this card matched right next to this card, um, you could almost switch them, and this card could equally represent, especially now, a cruelty. Now, obviously, the understandings of Twitter, Facebook, CNN, Fox, and all that has dramatically changed since the deck was created. But the application of these forms of realism and trying to see people as they are, it's not fun. It's not um, as well explained as maybe the artist would like it to be. And I hope that's coming off respectfully. I'm not trying to diminish the work or the hard work of the artist, but I think that you're allowed to say, "Hey, I think that this isn't this isn't executed as great as you would wish it to be." In some ways, um, I talked about your right to suffer. I think you do have a right to suffer, but I keep this deck in my collection as a reference. Um, I do not use this deck, and it's almost like I said earlier, gratuitous in its suffering in a way that I don't appreciate. And you can use suffering in decks in a way that I appreciate and I enjoy. For example, for my underrated deck, I did the Land Back Tarot and the Oracle of Colonization. Yep, okay, got that. So this is the Land Back Tarot. Talk about underrated. Um, this deck it's so beautiful to me, right? Um, it's so painful. It shows so much suffering, so much heartache, arguably so much evil from current administration that it's almost painful to look at, but you still need to do it, you know? I like how the justice has a question mark. This deck has revealed to me many things, such as ways that we are currently still attacking indigenous people in the US, you know, as well as international. The artwork is almost, it's like a trope where you see and hear of children doing illustrations that show more to reality than people are willing to admit. And I think that the art style where everything's kind of loose and childlike is intentional when you compare it to the artwork from the Oracle of Colonization, right? If the same person did both, you know, and even if it wasn't the same person, if the same person had access to both artists and then chose to use this artist for the tarot deck, there had to be a reason. This deck has included vocabulary into my vernacular. It has changed my point of view so much. And I love it. I love it. And I don't understand how I don't hear more people talking about how great this deck is. Let's see if I can find it. It's the last card. The charlatan, as an image of someone who betrays their own identity for their own individual profit, is one of the biggest influences to my vocabulary. Um, like I said, it can show suffering, it can show the real world, and it does it in a way that I think is not only educational, but also it pulls it off, right? The artwork style, minus the painful cards, it's fun, you know, it's creative, it's freeing and liberating. And the metaphor of this, of a system of belief that was used to commit multiple acts of genocide, that is then being controlled and fought off from someone with their own space. I think this is beautiful, right? I think that the metaphor here and what it represents of saying, you can't kill me or my children anymore. Amazing. And also, know your enemy. Hello, I'm ally. I think I never even noticed the Hello Kitties. There's just so much here that I think that this is why I buy indie decks, you know, because I never know what I'm gonna get. And deck is so underrated in the way of like how beautiful and amazing it is. Light work and versus shadow work. Let's get into having fun. Okay. So this might seem a little out of nowhere, but for light work, I use this deck. This was my third tarot deck ever. I edged it in black after I cut it off, and then I cut the corners off, so I have this black and white nature of it. And I may have cut it in the air with a pair of scissors, creating this rough, slightly different size edging. I love it. Light work as to accept your vulnerability, to prove kindness to yourself and beauty, and revealing things to you in that way that isn't gratuitous, right? I love it. I think this deck for me represents vulnerability. It represents community wide change. It represents so much to me. And even years later, as I go play with other decks, I come back to this one, right? I still use this deck. I still have my own personal means with this. And something about light work can extend to gratitude. And in many ways, this deck has taught me how to be grateful to the very specific artistical choices that creators use and do when they make their own decks, right? And we can get into this into like the conscious category, but everything from what is colorful to what is not colorful to what is black and white and what is not, what is revealed, what isn't. Um, Even the backgrounds, I feel like are so intentional, right? I just in love. Love this lover's card. Me as a goth. Whenever I pull like a querent card from this deck always tells me you're the Son of Cups. And if I had to say there was a card that showed off the beauty and light work and simplicity, it would be this one. One of the few mass market decks I have that I love. And of course, it used to be an indie deck. So for shadow work, you may be surprised to see this deck. The Playful Heart Tarot by Kitten Chops. This is highly detailed. This is childlike artwork, just like the Landback Tarot. I think that there is something about, I'm not saying this stack, there's something about toxic positivity that like creates so much harm. Um, but sometimes, and now I am talking about this deck, something that can be very powerful and potent with shadow work is happy, fluffy tarot decks. When you point out points in time of your life when you should have been safe and you should have been secure and everything should have been happy. I think that this deck is shadow work in the way that it almost shows an innocence that is like marketed to children at a young age. You are a guy, you are a girl. There's nothing wrong or makes you stronger or weaker than another person. The world is full of beauty, and everyone tries to do the best whenever they can. We're all just trying to be a good person. And the shadow work is realizing growing up, and it's through the application of this deck that that's not true. You know, there are people who do live their entire lives with the intention of creating harm. And there are people who believe with their entire spirit that they are better than you based fundamentally on an attribute that you can or cannot change, such as your sex or your gender or your sexuality or your height or your race, or where you come from or how wealthy you are or what your job is, or even just how you style and address yourself, what religion you believe in. I think that this is such a happy, fun, welcoming, colorful, playful deck. Um, and I think that because you saw some Oracle cards that they added, um, because of how welcoming and fun and playful it is, this embracing your inner child work is almost pulling and revealing of shadow, of pain, in almost like a way that may be too uncomfortable for some, right? I think this deck is. Thank you, kittens. When we talk about shadow work, it's not always doom and gloom and death and bones. Sometimes it's why can't I be comfortable around XYZ thing? Why can't I be soft? Why can't I be fuzzy? Why do I feel like my heart has been hardened to the world? And I think decks like this should off very well. This is getting to be a long one. And to think that this is like my third video filming today. So for the last one, we are almost done. Conscious versus unconscious. Now, I talked about appreciating artwork. This is the conscious. This is the Heroine Tarot. I love women. I love women so much. And I personally have a bone to pick so much with sacred feminine decks that do not love women as much as this deck loves women. This is the Heroine Tarot, a diverse, female centric deck showing women as we see them bold, beautiful, and empowered. Everything from the fashion to what part of skin is being shown or their transparencies, to body position. It feels intentional, you know? Also, beautiful holographic etching. This deck is so unbelievably beautiful in so many different ways, you know? Um, that tier. The faux nude illusion with the bead in the back. I am so happy to have this deck part of my collection and show women as beautifully femme and beautifully masculine or butch, to show different silhouettes, to show different races, different hair lengths, sometimes different body types, sometimes less different body types. Look at that. Objectively beautiful. Everything in this deck feels intentional, and I think that it is almost a shame that I have this deck due to how high it has set my standards for feminine, um, or sacred feminine or women decks. Also, I feel like she's like one of those real housewives. And then this person reminds me of a Dragula contestant, Kendra Onyx. And then let's see if I can find it. Well, first off, love that silhouette. And then she reminds me of this TikToker who talks about lace and lace making and the history of lace. I mean, how do you not love this deck? If you love women, highly suggest getting this. Also, another example of a non-reversible back that I love. Unconscious. I have bones to pick with this. So, at a point in time, I was looking for. Yeah, I cut out my own. Whatever. I cut out, and I was looking for surrealist tarot decks for different art movements, and I got this deck. This is mass market. This quality. I'm not even rough with the box. I'm not like the. I'm not. I don't understand. Well, I guess I do. You know, to make a profit, you do have to make things as low quality as possible. You know, and when you don't have to care about the consumer, yeah, I guess you could make a profit easily that way. Rip to honestly to indie deck review. The artwork of a surrealist artist is supposed to be representative and in connection with your unconscious. I think aspects of this definitely meet the mark. I also feel like, I'm just gonna do a pure red velvet moment. Part of the artwork is inconsistent. It's lacking in the same creative storytelling and the way that it almost feels like it's multiple separate decks at the same time. Like these all look like analogous but different style tarot decks. I also don't appreciate. This is an example of a card that you're like, how are these from the same deck? I don't get it. I also don't appreciate the artist's choice to make the Emperor card into war, right? Um, as a surrealist, unconscious deck, I think that this is amazing. Um, as a art piece to consistently tell stories, less so. I appreciate what the artist is putting down, and I don't want it to sound like I'm not appreciative of that. And it's also kind of like, if you don't like it, make your own deck. So hey, maybe I have to make my own. But I think that almost just dug a hole, didn't I, into complaining. The moon card is here is so beautiful. The Ten of Swords right here is so beautiful. The Three of Tides here is so beautiful. I think that the way that this artist particularly works with shading and color is beautiful. The way that they use almost these faces that are, I think, like collaged on is also beautiful. I just think that I guess this might just be another example of a deck that I have a love-hate relationship. And if I have a strong reaction like this to it, then I feel like I need to keep it. Hopefully you don't take that as like an insult to the deck. But I think as the unconscious, there's so many different ways to represent that. There's so many different ways, allegedly, as artists, for us to get in tap with that. And I just think that what better deck to represent my unconscious feelings than a deck that I struggle to communicate about, but yet equally produces such a strong reaction to. I will say, before this, I didn't really buy mass market decks, and I think after this, I'm kind of like, it's almost all indie decks for me. Or if it is a mass market deck, it's a deck that used to be indie. It's just also easier to vote with your money that way. Okay. In that case, thank you so much for watching this video with me. I know it's a long one. If you have finished this video, comment what you think. Am I a terrible person for not liking a deck? Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Okay? Bye-bye for now.